The Sacramento Kings lose again, falling to 5-16 on the season despite the best efforts of the bench unit, who completely carried the starters in this game. What do we make of the insane plus-minus numbers, both from a team perspective and when looking at individual players like Zach LaVine? We'll break it down right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News, and it was nice for me to be back here in the Golden One Center. Been a little while since I've been in this building. Of course, I missed the last two Kings home games against the Suns and the Timberwolves because I was out on vacation at the time, and of course, I missed the last two Kings wins, so I actually haven't really watched a Kings victory in almost a month at this point. So again, if you want to blame me, feel free to. But the Kings lose to the Memphis Grizzlies 115-107 tonight in a game where, there's no way to sugarcoat it. There's no other way to say it. The bench unit completely carried the starters, outplayed them, dragged them, whatever you want to say. The bench was the only reason that the Sacramento Kings had a chance in this game. And every time the Kings rallied, went on runs, and actually built leads, it came at the behest of the bench unit. I mean, the plus-minus numbers are such a flawed stat in so many ways. And over the years, if you listen to me here on Locked On Kings, you know that I typically hate plus-minus because a lot of people use plus-minus to judge individual players when it is such a team-oriented stat. And we're going to talk about individual plus-minus numbers, particularly in the case of Zach LaVine, later on in this show, and dissect what's fair, what's unfair, what's true that number reveals, and what also that number doesn't tell or what it doesn't say about how Zach LaVine individually played. We'll get into all that, but from a team perspective, the plus-minus number is the most accurate number of the night for how this game went. The Sacramento Kings starters, DeMar DeRozan had the best plus-minus out of the Sacramento Kings starting five with a -9. The rest of the starters were -20, -21, -30, and -24. If you don't understand the plus-minus number, essentially it means when you're on the floor, is your team scoring more than the opposing team or giving up more to the opposing team? So essentially, Zach LaVine was -30 in this game. That means when Zach LaVine was on the floor, the Memphis Grizzlies outscored the Kings by 30 points. Again, it's a very negative, harsh number to assign to an individual player when it's based off of all 10 players on the floor. But the Kings bench unit, their bench five that played in this game, +13, +19, +17, +6, and +9. The second unit was leagues better than the Memphis Grizzlies. And yes, that does also take into account who's not playing for Memphis when the bench guys are on the floor. Zach Edey is the main talking point there. Zach Edey dominated the Sacramento Kings. We'll talk about him when we're talking about Zach LaVine later on in the podcast. That's coming in the second segment. I'm just focusing on a team-wide conversation right now. We cannot just say, though, that the bench unit only played that well because they were playing simply just against the Memphis Grizzlies bench unit. That's not the case whatsoever. There was a bench unit. Malik Monk, Keon Ellis, Neek Clifford, Precious Achiuwa, and Maxime Reynaud. That bench five against a lineup that was primarily of Grizzlies starters, including Jaren Jackson Jr. That group went on a 9-0 run to turn a first quarter deficit into a 35-31 lead. Now, at the helm of that run, captaining that second unit was Malik Monk. Malik Monk was an energy changer at multiple times in this game. He was brilliant. 21 points, 8 of 17 from the field. Of course, he made some mistakes too, but for the most part, Malik Monk was the catalyst behind the pushes and the energy that the second unit brought to this game. Also had 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks. He was one of the bench guys with plus 13. So a really, really good game for Malik Monk, coming off the bench, really handling those primary point guard responsibilities, with Russell Westbrook having a tough game, but Russ being the starting point guard of that second unit. Dennis Schroeder missing his 3rd straight game with an injury. Malik Monk stepped up in a major way. He was really, really good in this game. But that unit that I talked about, Malik Monk, Nick Clifford, Keon Ellis, Precious Achiuwa, and Maxime Reynaud. They get stops. They're getting out and running in transition. This was the 9-0 run to end the first quarter. Malik Monk gets out with a nasty tomahawk jam off of a Kings stop. Then the Kings get another stop. Then Nick Clifford gets out in transition and hits a tough Euro step layup. Kings get another stop. Kings get out in transition. Maxime Reynaud finishes through contact at the rim. Kings get another stop. Nick Clifford hits a tough contested straightaway three-pointer. 9-0 Kings run to end that first quarter, completely led by the bench unit. That group of 5 players did not get back into the game together at any other point. Now, 4 out of those 5 got back into the game, period. 4 of those 5 played at other times. The 5th guy that didn't get back into the game was Keon Ellis. That also we will talk about later on in the show. But the fact that that unit got you back into the game, that unit went on a 9-0 run. That unit was playing the exact basketball that Doug Christie speaks about constantly. And that unit did not get back into the game, period. This is just, these are the things that Doug Christie and this coaching staff does, that while I'm not, and I'm consistently not blaming the coaches for this issue here in Sacramento, because it's fundamentally a roster construction issue. These are the decisions that just don't make sense to me. They are not consistent at all with the words that Doug Christie is saying, the words that Scott Perry has said. The actions and with the rotations just do not meet the words. How does this group not get back into the game for a single second after that 6-minute stretch that they played so well together? Now, to be fair, in the third quarter, when another bench-led unit brought the Kings back into the game after a horrible 10-0 start for the Memphis Grizzlies to start that second half against the Kings starting unit, by the way, Grizzlies come out of the second half, go on a 10-0 run, build up to a 13-point lead. A Kings bench unit primarily gets them back into the game and actually gets them the lead back going into the fourth quarter. Malik Monk was once again part of that unit, as was Precious Achiuwa and Nick Clifford. But this time, 2 starters joined them, DeMar DeRozan and Keegan Murray. Well, I'm glad Keegan was out there with that group because we know Keegan is an important part of this future. And DeMar DeRozan had a significantly better second half. Like, he looked more aggressive. He looked more comfortable. There are a lot of people that have been hooting and hollering for DeMar to play more with that second unit because his game seems to complement that second unit better. So DeMar played really well. Credit to Doug Christie. He found that lineup that worked. And then when he went back to a primarily starting group in the fourth quarter, they couldn't score. The Kings end up losing this game. Here's Doug. So I asked Doug Christie after the game because I can't come up with an explanation. I asked Doug Christie after the game. 1, why did you not go back to that group at any other time? And then I also asked him about DeMar DeRozan and what he brings when he's playing primarily with the second unit. Here's what Doug Christie said. Doug, kind of building off that a little bit, that unit that got you back in that group, we didn't see that group, those 5, together again for the remainder of the game. Was that just a read of the game call, or did you see something you didn't like?
No, we were trying to get back to it a couple times, and then they ended up going, I think, big. I'd have to go back and look at the film. It's just sometimes the game dictates how it goes. It's just you want to get back, and then you get a feel, and you're thinking, okay, this is going to work. Guys are going to, and before you know it, it gets away from you a little bit. But I'll have to go back and look at that. Yeah.
Building off of that, DeMar specifically in that second half seemed to really get going with some of those second unit guys. What do you like about what he brings to that typically younger group?
Yeah, DeMar in the second unit is fantastic because a lot of those younger guys, they can depend on him. You can play through him on the offensive end of the floor. And then defensively, they're young and they are flying around, grabbing rebounds, tipping the ball. Their pickup points were nice and high. So it's a blessing to have him when he's able to play in that unit. But sub patterns and different things it's going to be up and down based upon what we're trying to find. Try to find a unit that played well. We did find one in the first half, and unfortunately weren't able to find the same type of intensity and what have you in the second half.
So going back to the first question I asked Doug and his answer about that not going back to that unit, I understand his point, like the Grizzlies went bigger and I just couldn't find a time to get them back in there, but I don't, while I understand it, I guess I don't subscribe to it. I don't agree with it. To me, it sounds like an excuse. Like, you have to find a way. If that unit was one of the best units that you had all night long, you have to go back to it at some point to see if you can continue picking up where that unit left off with how well they played at the end of that first quarter. The way the third quarter ended with that bench unit plus DeRozan and Keegan made that pill a little bit easier to swallow. But you have a group that has success, and you don't go back to them, period. When they play the basketball that you want to play, no explanation would have made sense to me. This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports. Bowl games and big basketball matchups, playoff pushes, it's all happening at the same time. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states. That includes California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. PrizePicks has added an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule. You can create a lineup in less than a minute right before a game starts, and the app makes the whole process smooth, intuitive, and mostly fun. You can choose from a huge range of unique stats like fantasy score, field goal attempts, free throws made, turnovers, whatever fits your strategy. Plus, they have the early payout feature, which is a great bonus when your lineup starts strong. You may get an option to cash out early so you can secure yourself some kind of victory. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, let's talk about Zach LaVine. 19 points. 8 of 17 from the field in this game, 3 steals. That's an encouraging defensive number from Zach LaVine. But the number everybody wants to talk about with Zach tonight, the number that stands out on the box score as if it was written in red ink, minus 30 on the game. When Zach LaVine was on the floor, the Grizzlies outscored the Kings by 30 points. Now we break down what's fair and what's unfair about that number. And understand, I'm not making an excuse for Zach, nor am I holding back on the areas that I need to be critical on for Zach LaVine, because there's going to be both of what I'm about to say, or in what I'm about to say here about Zach in this segment. A lot of Zach LaVine's minutes were against the Grizzlies when Zach Edey was on the floor. I'm not making an excuse. I'm just simply stating a fact. Zach Edey was a man amongst boys. There was not a player on the Kings. There was not a person in Sacramento that could do a thing about Zach Edey in the paint tonight. Edey, 32 points, 16 of 20 from the field, 17 rebounds. He was a plus 25 in this game, and somehow that plus 25 number seems low. If you had told me he was plus 40, I'd have believed you easily. Zach Edey absolutely dominated the Kings, and it was not him being plus 30 or 25 and scoring 32 points, going one-on-one against Zach LaVine every play. In fact, very few possessions did LaVine come even close to Zach Edey. Right? Completely different positions, completely different players. Edey was scoring on everybody, from Drew Eubanks to Maxime Reynaud to Precious Achiuwa. Anybody in a Kings uniform, Zach Edey was tossing to the side and scoring with ease. Though this is where the plus-minus stat is unfair towards an individual player, because Zach Edey's scoring does not have much to do at all with Zach LaVine. It doesn't. So that number, that minus 30 number, is drastically inflated because of Zach Edey and his dominance, period, that the Kings as a team could not slow down. Sure, could Zach LaVine have helped better on Zach Edey at times? Yes, and there were times where he did kind of cheat in and try to help, and it resulted in open threes for the Memphis Grizzlies, particularly in the first half. But here's the other side of it. Here's the part of Zach LaVine's reputation, a reputation that he's carried with him throughout his NBA career. That is true, that a number like this represents, the minus 30 represents. LaVine, even when scoring, I know he only finished with 19 points, but he was really good offensively to start this game. He was scoring in bunches early on for the Sacramento Kings in this game. And yet, the Kings were behind for the vast majority of the time he was on the floor early. Again, in large part because of Zach Edey. But the point is, even when Zach LaVine is doing what he's supposed to do, even when Zach LaVine is scoring at a high level, the Kings are losing. Zach LaVine's offense is not impacting winning because how poor he and the Kings as a team are on the defensive side of the ball, particularly when LaVine and DeMar DeRozan are on the floor together. I'm not singling those two out like it's all their fault, but the reality is, going back to their time together in Chicago and the time together here in Sacramento, defensively, it does not work when those two are on the floor. And it seems like offensively, those two cannot coexist and eat at the same time. LaVine is balling out in the first quarter. He's scoring a lot of points early on in this game. DeMar DeRozan not having a good first half. Second half, DeMar DeRozan way better. Hitting shots, getting more involved. And Zach LaVine had a very quiet second half. In the fourth quarter, Zach LaVine scored 3 points, went 1 of 6 from the field. Why is it that the Sacramento Kings, why is it that Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan cannot find a way to coexist offensively to a level where the Kings are maximizing both of their offensive abilities? I understand there's only one basketball, so they can't both shoot at the same time. And I understand when one has the hot hand, you want to make sure you're feeding that hot hand. But when a player has a hot hand, the defenses also react to that player. What DeMar DeRozan needs to do a better job of is when Zach LaVine is scoring, DeMar needs to react to that and find ways to get involved and and take advantage of the defense focusing on Zach LaVine, and vice versa. When DeMar DeRozan is scoring in the second half, when DeMar's getting going and the defense is reacting to him, Zach LaVine needs to do a better job getting open and knocking down those shots when he gets them. It just seems like the two of them are incapable of having good games consistently together. And that's one of the reasons why offensively this Sacramento Kings team has been so bad. So to recap, Zach LaVine being a minus 30, it's not a fair stat. And a lot of people are going to, I'm already seeing it, a lot of people are going to use that to absolutely crucify LaVine. And I know he's kind of public enemy number one amongst the Kings fan base right now because of things that he said, the interaction that he had with Devlin Carter, the Kings season ticket holder behind the bench, who, by the way, Devlin was back in the building tonight in his normal seat. No altercation of any kind tonight. But the minus 30, that number is inflated and in a lot of ways is unfair because of the dominance of Zach Edey. But at the same time, it is accurate to say, because it's been accurate for most of his career, that Zach LaVine does not impact winning basketball. You know who said that? Scott Perry, the Kings general manager, said those words or something very, very similar to that, questioning his ability to be a winning basketball player before he even got the Kings job. It's been part of Zach's reputation. I want to talk about Keegan Murray too. Good and bad from Keegan Murray. Truth be told, Keegan didn't have a good game. This was not a good game from Keegan Murray. He struggled offensively, 12 points, 5 of 12 from the field. I love it. Keep shooting. Keep trying to score. Keep being aggressive. You're going to have nights where the ball doesn't go in. You take bad shots. You have inefficient shooting nights. Don't care. Keep shooting the basketball. I'm okay with it. Only 2 rebounds, especially with Domantas Sabonis out. Keegan, you need to get that number up. Again, you're dealing with a gigantor in Zach Edey in this game, but Keegan needs to be better. He was a minus 20 in this game, but did have 5 steals and 3 blocks. Massive defensive numbers from Keegan Murray in this game. The Kings only turned the ball over 8 times, and I think they forced 22 or 23 Grizzlies turnovers, and they still lost. That says a lot. But what I will say about Keegan is this was a bad game for him. And it's encouraging that a game like this is a bad game for Keegan, considering he didn't play horrible. He had good numbers and good moments in this game, but it was still an overall bad game for him. I think that Kings fans should and are able to take some encouragement from that. Like I said at the top of the show, this episode of Locked On Kings is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment with live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, I got to speed through this final segment here because my camera battery's about to die. I want to talk about Keon Ellis really quick. Like I mentioned earlier, Keon Ellis was part of that group that had that great push in the first quarter, that 9-0 run in the first quarter. Keon Ellis played 6 minutes, most of them at the end of that first quarter, a little bit, almost 2 minutes to start the second quarter. He was a +9 in those 6 minutes, and then he did not come back into the game. You will have to really convince me at this point that Keon Ellis is not gone. If I'm Keon Ellis, I'm looking around going, forget it. If the Kings don't trade me at the trade deadline, I'm out of here this summer. I'm testing my value in the open market. I know there are teams out there that do value me because I do impact winning. Sacramento ain't it. I appreciate them giving me the 2-way contract and giving me the opportunity. I've outgrown them. I'm moving on. If Keon Ellis feels that way, I don't blame him one bit. Don't blame him one bit. To me, it's as inexcusable as it was that Doug Christie didn't find a way to get that unit back into the game, not getting Keon Ellis back into the game. I don't understand it. Whether Zach Edey was playing and gobbling the Kings up or not. I don't get it. And that is going to lead to a conversation that we're going to have on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Kings. Not specific to Keon Ellis, but specific to the Sacramento Kings and the upcoming, well, not really upcoming, but the soon-to-come or whatever trade deadline. It's obvious the Kings need to make changes. It's obvious the fan base wants the Kings to make changes, wants the Kings to make trades. The question is, I want you to ask this amongst yourself, and feel free to answer it in the comment section down below. If you're watching on YouTube, hit me up at MattGeorgeSack on Twitter, or email me mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Do you hold as long as you can until the trade deadline to try and maximize the value of return that you get for players like DeMar DeRozan, Malik Monk, whoever? Or do you quite literally take whatever you can get just to move these guys, get off their money, free up the rotation spots, and give those minutes to some of the younger guys, or maybe even a Keon Ellis to try and convince him to stay? Do you take what you can get, even if it's pennies on the dollar, or do you hold to try and get maximum value, realistic maximum value? Let me know, and I'm going to discuss that exact thing with Damian Barling from ESPN 1320 on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Kings. For now, I got to go. My dead battery icon is blinking in front of me here in the Golden One Center. I appreciate your support as always. Can't wait to have you join me next on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.